Good morning, and welcome to Sunday Soul Day, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. Today we have Phil Johnson, founder and CEO of the Master of Business Leadership Program, which raises consciousness and develops better habits, which turns challenges into opportunities for career, personal, and business success. He's been transforming lives for over 31 years and impacting billions in career revenue. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day, Phil.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Us too. Good morning, Allie.
Good morning, Demisha. Good morning, Phil.
Hi, Allie.
Well, Phil, when you and I spoke recently, we discussed your earlier life from being born prematurely and living the first 6 months of your life in an incubator to you calling yourself a slower learner in your earlier years to then spending 20 years in a semiconductor industry. Can you share a defining moment in your life that inspired you to become a coach and mentor to others through MBL?
Yeah, great question. I think the first 14 years of my life were very traumatic for lots of different reasons, and it really created a curiosity, a motivation based on fear, to try and figure out what in the heck was going on, to try and see what was on the other side of the hill. So I really, that combined with my mother's death, just before I turned 14, really kind of put a jolt in me to try and achieve, to try and understand, and I wanted my life to have meaning. So it's really, I started on this kind of, you might almost say it was a quest to figure out what was going on and try and help others.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I can't imagine losing a mother at 14 and what that did for you. You kind of mentioned, wanting to have purpose. What did I mean? Were you able to define that at such a young age? Like, did you know what that looked like for you?
I had I had I had no idea. Um, I just knew that whatever I was going to find was going to be better than where I was.
Mhm.
So but I really, I had no real role models and no idea how the world worked, and I had no real idea who I was, apart from what my grade school teachers had told me, that I was a slow learner, and my marks proved it.
Hmm. And how did you find that? Because you had an interesting journey, even leading you to your career in the semiconductor space.
Yeah, that was just the 20 years I spent in the semiconductor industry was, again, just part of the journey, just searching, trying to get an understanding, acquiring information. Um, and it really has only, I would say, been in with the last 10 years that I've really come to understand that the work I do now really comes full circle with the promise I made to myself 55 years ago. So it's all been a leap of faith.
Wow. Phil, thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and about your learning. I have so many clients who struggle with anxiety and depression who shared that they believed that they weren't smart when they weren't smart because when they were younger they didn't get good grades in school, and they carried that narrative with them for so many years, and it lowered their self-esteem and made a story for them of who they were and what they were capable of doing. I'm so interested in learning about where you went with that and how it didn't define you so that it can inspire so many people. So
Well, if you don't mind me, it did define me for about 35 years, but it also turned me into a super overachiever because of that feeling of not fitting in.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I can so relate. I was diagnosed with ADHD in fourth grade, and I went from feeling like I was behind the eight ball and finishing last on exams, or not doing so well and feeling like I couldn't keep up or studying more than my friends, that at some point I felt like I had to overcompensate. I don't know if that's the same as overachieving, but I felt like I had to overcompensate to prove to myself and others that I was intelligent, that I wasn't lazy or dumb or stupid. So I definitely can understand the overachieving and the overcompensation.
Well, I have dyslexia. I don't believe I have ADHD. But the dyslexia is a neurological disorder that doesn't get better. It still takes me 10 times as long as the average person to read a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I have difficulty. I tend to invert names and numbers in my mind.
Yeah.
And that's never going to change.
Yeah.
But it's also because my brain doesn't work the way most people's brains work. Um, it gave me it forced me to do a lot of what I refer to as emotional labor, and that gave me a perspective that most people don't get, and it helped me to identify patterns um, that is related to emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And one thing I try to teach my clients and younger individuals when they say, "Oh, I'm not good at school," I try to bring it home that you don't learn that specific way. The school teaches one specific way, and you are intelligent. We just have to find how you learn. And I too, with reading comprehension, I'd get word. I never was diagnosed with dyslexia, but I'm sure I have something there along with the ADHD, where I would invert words, I'd pronounce words incorrectly, I'd be a slow reader, have to read the same paragraph over and over. I never found a love for reading until probably high school.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on a lot of that, and had a similar journey. And I'm sure so many other people will be able to relate. I hear it time and time again. So I want to ask you, you mentioned that you've turned down 3 vice presidential roles within the semiconductor industry to create the MBL program. What drove you to make that pivotal decision, and how has it influenced your approach to leadership and coaching?
Great question. I came to realize the more time I spent in corporations and working with other companies, there's a great deal of toxicity and disengagement in organizations. And that really surprised me. So I didn't want to stay in that environment, and I wanted to do something about it. And that really got me working on the development of what I now call the Master of Business Leadership program. And quite frankly, I'd been working on it for about 20 years before I actually left the corporations and started my own company. So it's been a very evolving process. So in a sense that the MBL program is a distillation of 55 years worth of research and implementation. But it's to answer your question, I was really disappointed at the quality of leadership or the lack of leadership that I saw, and I really wanted to. I didn't want to be part of it. I I wanted to try and help if I could. I wanted to try and do something about it. And eventually I got to the point where I knew I had to leave. I call it leaving. You have to leave the herd in order to lead the herd in a better direction. So in order for me to make the kind of contribution that I wanted to make, I had to leave corporate life.
I love that. I had to leave the herd to lead the herd. That is amazing. I'm going to steal that.
Sure, go ahead.
That's amazing. And I love that you became the change you wanted to see.
Yeah, yeah. I really it wasn't a difficult decision because what I do now is my passion. It's what living and working on purpose means for me. And I've never been happier in my life than I am now, not even close. And I'm in December I'll be 70, but I love my life and I love the opportunity to work with individuals and organizations to help, to be of service.
I love that, Phil. And I'm definitely stealing that too, like Allie, leaving the herd in order to lead the herd.
Yeah.
And I love that you're serving in a different way, because when you're in an organization, that is filled with toxicity and, just poor leadership and challenges, makes it very hard to make the impact that you're able to have when you kind of branch out on your own.
Let me make another comment about that.
Yeah,
I
please.
tried to do what I do now within corporations when I was in corporations, and I found it to be impossible. There was just too much toxicity, and so I had to step outside of that in order to really help individuals and organizations through the challenges they're facing and help to raise their level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the MLB program is known for developing emotional MBL, excuse me, I said MLB. MBL program is known for developing emotional intelligence and inspiring, leadership. Tell us more about the program and how this is achieved. It's so good.
It's in a sense it's very simple, and in another sense it's very complex. Basically, I help people to become more conscious about what's going on in them and around them, and I give them better habits that enable them to turn their challenges into opportunities for career, personal, and corporate success. Now, there's 55 years behind that statement, and a lot of interactions. See, people don't know what they don't know, and we're only actually conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. The rest of the time, we're relying on our habits to determine our behavior and our results. And that's okay, because our unconscious mind is stronger, faster, and takes less of our metabolic energy than our conscious mind. But in order to get better results than we're currently getting, we have to become more conscious. We cannot get better results at our current level of consciousness. So the MBL program helps people to become more conscious about the choices they're making and the results of those choices. And it gives them better habits that can enable them to achieve better results, and help them to become more conscious. And it works 100% of the time, anywhere in the world. But it's challenging. See, because although most people would like better results than they're currently getting in some area of their life, we don't like change. We don't like change. Doesn't matter whether the change is good change or bad change. We don't like change. We've got a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. So we really have to connect with an emotional result that we want to achieve. We have to develop an emotional connection to a desired result that we want to achieve that's stronger than our fear. That's stronger than the fear that's holding us back from moving outside of our comfort zone in the pursuit of that desired result.
Love
Does that
that.
make sense?
Yes, that's so good. And I think that's where, what I have seen throughout my career working in tech, where people don't necessarily know where they want to go. And so it's difficult to even establish an emotional connection, because if you don't know where you want to go, how can you attach yourself to it?
That's a great comment. And the answer is you can't. So that the journey always involves an initial leap of faith, because you can only connect the dots in hindsight after you've taken that leap of faith. And usually that leap of faith is motivated by pain.
Yep.
It's motivated by an urgent desire for better results than we're currently getting. So the only way you can become clearer on what living and working in purpose means for you is you've got to take action. You've got to take the leap.
Yeah.
Because you can only, that clarity only comes after you've taken the leap. It doesn't come before you take the leap.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you touched on that and change. With my clients, we, talk about the barriers to change. And so often their fear is that change equals worse. And we have to get to that place of change just equals different. Let's, get out of our comfort zone and let's take that leap, like you're saying, and take small steps towards that change so that you can find your happiness and your purpose.
And that's the key to know. That's the difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing something experientially. So it's the experiential process that develops leadership and emotional intelligence. It's not an intellectual process. It's an experiential process.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had mentioned the higher consciousness. Can you elaborate on what the higher consciousness means in the context of leadership and how it contributes to personal and professional growth?
Yeah. When we move outside of our comfort zone in the pursuit of something we want to achieve, a desired result, that journey also helps us to become more aware, more conscious of what's going on in us and around us. And really, that's the key. That's the whole purpose. I don't want to get too far into the weeds here. I will if you want, but it's really the whole purpose of our existence.
Get in the weeds. Get in the weeds. We want to hear the weeds.
Well, okay. The whole purpose of our human existence. Dimesha, how deep do you want me to go? I don't want to. I mean, a lot of this is going to sound like Swahili to you. Pardon?
No, I'll let you decide, because you have to remember our audience. They might not be as familiar. So please share.
We're not actually living life. We are life, living for a brief moment in a physical form. Every single cell in our body is vibrating at exactly the same frequency, and that's who we are. Nobody's vibrating at the same frequency. And so when our bodies actually wear out, the energy that's giving that body life simply leaves the body and the body quickly deteriorates, but we don't die. As a matter of fact, every single cell in our body dies and is replaced at least once in every 7-year period, and depending on the organ, many times. So there isn't a single cell in our body that was there 7 years ago. Yet we remain. How can that be? And the answer is, we're not our body. Our body is simply the vehicle that our energy inhabits and gives life to through its vibration, through the vibrational energy. And the whole purpose of the challenges we face in life is to use those challenges as the motivation or the opportunity, depending on how we face them, to deepen our level of consciousness about what's going on in us and around us. And when we allow our ego-based fear to control us, we're unwilling to take that leap of faith. So instead of becoming more conscious, we become less conscious. We become more resistant, more judgmental, more attached to outcome. That increases the level of toxicity in us and around us. So all of this is really based on, is the whole purpose of our existence is to take the challenges we face as the opportunities to increase our level of consciousness. And that's it. The problem is that most people don't have the motivation to take the leap of faith that the process requires. So what they try and do instead, if they're not willing to change themselves, they try and change everybody else, often using some type of position-based power to control and manipulate others. And that is the root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict, war everywhere in the world. It's no different anywhere in the world. So it's really our unwillingness to do the emotional labor that raising our level of consciousness requires that's created the world we live in today. And quite frankly, it's unsustainable. We're facing a tsunami of rapidly accelerating global change with a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. We're all being ripped out of our comfort zones, and we're being forced to do the emotional labor that change and innovation requires, quite frankly, in order for our survival. In relative terms, humanity's been on the planet for less than half of 1 second. And in that time, we've destroyed the climate. We're facing things like CRISPR-Cas9, gene editing technology, AI, other pandemics, that we lack the emotional intelligence, that we lack the wisdom to be able to deal with. There isn't a single other species on the planet that wouldn't be better off if humanity didn't exist. Every other species would thrive if we didn't exist. We're the virus on the planet, and we simply are at a point in our evolution where we're being forced to evolve beyond just intellect. And the change that's required, the direction of our evolution, is in the development of our emotional intelligence. The development of our emotional intelligence is the next stage in our human evolution, and we must evolve in that direction because of the accelerating rate of global change. So let me just explain briefly what I mean by that. There's a part of our little lizard brain called the amygdala that's been trying to keep us safe and alive for hundreds of millions of years by making sure we never leave the safety or the perceived safety of our cave, our comfort zone. So if we do, it automatically triggers the release of a hormone into our bloodstream called cortisol. And that causes the executive center of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, to shut off. That's our seat of reasoning and creativity. So that shuts off. And we go into what psychologists refer to as an amygdala hijack. Some people lash out, some people run away, some people freeze like a deer in the headlights. When that happens in conflict situations, people die. And when it happens in business or personal situations, relationships die. We burn trust. So as an analogy, if you think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4-year-old child, the development of our emotional intelligence acts like a big brother or a big sister to quiet that amygdala response down and better enable us to feel the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always triggers in us and be able to move through it towards what it is we're trying to achieve, as opposed to allowing that fear to keep us trapped in our comfort zones. Excuse me. So, see, our educational system has failed us. And our employment system has failed us because it's focused on our ability to do intellectual labor, and it's done nothing to develop our emotional intelligence. So we're facing a future of rapidly accelerating global change that we are totally unprepared for.
Yeah,
And
wow.
pardon?
Oh, I just was going to comment. Wow. Demisha, told you to go deep and you went deep. So,
I've been on I've been on over 150 podcasts as a guest alone in the last 2 years, telling people the same thing. I'm trying to ring the bell. I'm trying to raise awareness about the value and importance of developing our emotional intelligence. We don't have a choice. And it's difficult to develop our emotional intelligence, but intellectual intelligence without emotional intelligence has been proven throughout history to be very destructive. Emotional intelligence is really the gateway that enables us to stay connected with our intellectual side, our intellect and creativity. It's the gateway that enables us to do that. It's also the gateway to our spiritual intelligence, which is a whole other level of evolution. But where we are now is the development of emotional intelligence, quite frankly, needs to become a multi-trillion-dollar a year industry in order for us to survive. So we're in trouble. And so generating revenue using these principles is easy. Career advancement is easy. Better personal relationships are easy in going through this process. But there's a whole other bigger thing going on here that requires our attention.
wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I talk to clients and give psychoeducation around our mind tries to keep us safe, but not sane. And then you described kind of the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn that happens to us when we get into that kind of reactive state after there's the cortisol release. I am hopeful. I am hopeful that we are just with what we're talking about, that more people are in therapy unapologetically and not secretively or not in shame about it. I see our young children, I see Demisha's kids, my daughter, practicing more of that emotional intelligence. I feel this way, or I need a break. And I think that as much as there's a lot to work on still. I'm seeing little bits and pieces of it that the generations before us didn't get to experience. And you're right, our emotional intelligence is like what, 80% of our overall intelligence.
Well, it's a different type of intelligence, and it has a dramatic multiplier effect on our results. As a study done at UC Berkeley over 40 years, comparing IQ with EQ, that concluded that emotional intelligence was 400% more valuable in determining success in intellectual intelligence. And what I'm about to say isn't going to make you feel better, unfortunately.
It's okay. I'm ready for it.
Hope isn't a strategy. And I can tell you from having worked with people and helping them through the emotional labor required, you can't develop emotional intelligence on your own. I mean, you could. It's taken me 55 years. But we don't have that kind of time. We unfortunately are at a time in our evolution where we need to be very purposefully working to develop our emotional intelligence at a much more rapid rate than we're comfortable with, to keep pace with the accelerating rate of global change. Mm-hmm. So I have no doubt that more and more people are going to see the value and importance of developing their emotional intelligence. But that's a very small percentage of the total population. And our energy, it's kind of like climate change. If 50% of the countries practice improving the climate and the other 50 don't, then everybody loses. It's like that with emotional intelligence as well. We really need to be working towards a massive shift in our consciousness to keep pace with the accelerating rate of global change. We actually, believe it or not, every mammal has a primal urge to be present, to shut off that voice in the back of our heads. We currently spend globally over $4 trillion a year trying to do that, trying to shut off that voice. And a lot of the ways we're currently trying to do that are destructive. And they actually drive us deeper into our comfort zone, and we become more resistive, more judgmental, more attached to outcome. So we're going in the wrong direction. But there is a growing number of individuals and organizations that are consciously working to develop their emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example of a company that's currently valued at over $3 trillion. And they're doing about $600 billion a year in revenue. And their primary hiring focus is emotional intelligence. That company is Apple. Mm-hmm. That's why when you walk into an Apple store, the energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to understand your pain and, if possible, offer a solution to your pain. Whether you buy anything is secondary to their desire to want to serve you. They want you to have a great experience. Maybe you'll tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. And if you think about it, the way you feel in that environment is very different from the energy coming out of the stores surrounding that environment. So that's an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. That's an example of the future of individual and organizational change.
Bill, let me ask you a question. That was such a great example that you said with Apple. And that's exactly how I feel when I go into any Apple store,
Right.
compared to other stores that just don't have the emotional intelligence. What are indicators that distinguish these type of leaders, like that have strong awareness, self-awareness, excuse me, and what qualities and attributes do you believe are critical in an effective leader to lead a company like Apple?
Awareness, consciousness, courage, openness, vulnerability, perceived vulnerability, compassion, empathy. See, we have these, because we've evolved over hundreds of billions of years from herds, tribes, teams, clubs, we've had to develop the ability to sense whether somebody's trying to help us or eat us. So we have these specialized brain cells in our prefrontal cortex called mirror neurons. That's why when you walk into a room, you can sense the energy in the room. Or you're having a conversation with somebody, you can sense whether they're trying to help you or hurt you. And so the more people learn to stop giving away their energy, the more they learn to lower their walls, the more people around them will sense that they can lower their walls too, that they can be more of who they truly are around you than they can be around other people. And that's what creates that inspirational leadership. That's what creates that attraction. So you can't fake being authentic, because we'll sense, not consciously, but subconsciously, we'll sense whether we feel safe in that environment or not. And that's why most people don't feel safe. That's why there's such a high degree of toxicity and disengagement within organizations. Gallup estimates that globally, worldwide, the level of employee engagement is only about 13%. Low levels of employee engagement are costing the US economy alone over $1 trillion a year. And there's almost a one-to-one correlation between the level of customer engagement and the level of employee engagement. So if your employees don't feel safe, if they don't feel engaged in what they're doing, then neither will your customers. So it's a massive problem, and it's simply another indication of what we're talking about our lack of emotional intelligence and how we're allowing our ego-based fears to create those toxic environments.
Yes, that is, oh my gosh, Phil, thank you. And that I love the list you gave, and one thing I was going to include was having the authenticity, because I feel like when leaders are operating from a place of fear and inauthenticity, rather than love and self-awareness and having that authenticity, it makes it so difficult for them to have the impact that they need to have to lead the organization.
It's impossible.
Say that again.
It is impossible.
Absolutely.
See, if you need a title to get people to follow you, you're not a leader. You're simply using position-based power to control and manipulate others.
Yes, and yes,
Let me
I love that, because I before you comment, I shared this with ladies that I was leading, and I was saying you don't need a title to lead. And I think that's where people they forget that, they forget their level of impact that they can have in organizations, in their personal lives, in their church, in their, in society. You don't need a title to do that. So I love that you said that. How do you help people break down their barriers to lead from a more authenticity,
All right, so here we go.
I'm like,
we're going deeper down into the rabbit
I
hole.
love it. I can't wait.
All right.
Authenticity. Let's go.
As I said earlier, we're actually only conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. But when we're born, we're not born with a conscious mind. We are born with an unconscious mind, but we don't start to become conscious until we're about a year or so old. But we immediately start wiring up our brain, creating the neural network pathways that become our habits. And a lot of those habits unconsciously cause us to give away our energy. And we do it in lots of different ways in how we communicate, listen, take responsibility, make decisions, all sorts of ways. But when we give away our energy, it creates an energy deficit in us. So at the same time we're unconsciously giving away our energy over here, we have to be trying to replace that energy by trying to steal energy from other people over here. And that dynamic is going on inside of everybody, everywhere, all the time, unconsciously. So what I do in the MBL program is I show people how they're unconsciously giving away their energy. And I give them better habits to practice to stop doing that. And when they stop giving away their energy, their need to steal the energy of other people goes away because they no longer need it. And it's in that process, it's in that journey that they become more inspirational leaders, they develop their emotional intelligence, they become more conscious of what's going on in them and around them. And that distances themselves from their ego-based fear, which leads to higher levels of trust and engagement, which guarantees career, personal, and corporate success. Guaranteed. So that's all of the, those are all of the outcomes that result from the journey of learning to stop giving away our energy. Let me give you an example. One of the MBL habits that I teach people, coach people, is called authentic listening. And the key to authentic listening is not to take anything personally. How somebody feels about you, whether they like you or whether they hate you, has nothing to do with you. It has to do with what's going on inside of the other people, the other person. But if how you feel about yourself is based on how anybody else feels about you, who's running your life, you or them? Well, it's them, right? You're unconsciously giving away your energy to them to determine how you should feel about you. You know, if you like me, I like me. If you don't like me, I don't like me. Now, as crazy as that might sound, what I've just described is all of social media. We bend over backwards trying to get people to like us so that we can feel better about ourselves. So, see, when we're giving away our energy, it doesn't stop there, because at the same time we're giving away our energy, we are also stealing energy from other people to replace the energy that we're giving away. And that creates the toxic environments, the environment we see. That creates the win-lose model we live in.
Can I interrupt you just a
Yeah,
second?
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're touching on energy. I just feel like we don't talk enough about energy, and that's like all we are. And so, and what you're describing is kind of what made Demisha and I decide to do Sunday Soul Day. Is if we fuel our own mind, body, and soul, then we are in charge of our energy and the energy that we spread, and other people's energy is none of our business, none of our concern. It's so good. Thank you.
It's called emotional contagion. We are, okay.
Here he goes again.
We are divine.
Yeah.
And the only thing standing in the way of our divinity are our walls of resistance, judgment, and attachment to outcome. We are going through this MBL process helps people to lower their walls and reconnect with who they really are as opposed to who they think they are. And as we become more conscious of who we are also not only connecting with ourselves, but we're connecting with everybody else.
Yeah.
See, we're all unique and connected at the same time. It's energy physics. So we all have a unique energy vibration, and that unique energy vibration is connected to every other unique energy vibration.
Yeah. So on that note of energy, you shared a thought-provoking quote about how toxic leadership steals energy while effective leaders inspire individuals to connect with their own inner energy. Can you expand on this a little bit more?
Sure. When we give away, I'm going to use a term that I use in my writing I call them people that give away their energy. Just call them victims or energy vampires. But a victim can't exist in isolation. Victims travel in packs. They have a codependent relationship with each other, but they don't like each other. They don't trust each other, and they can never lower their walls around each other, but they need each other. As long as they're giving away their energy, they need to be around other people giving away their energy. And they have an insatiable appetite. They create the drama, chaos, and conflict,
Yes.
which causes that energy to be more easily stolen, given away. And if we don't address it, it's like cancer within an organization. If we don't address it, it will metastasize and kill the organization eventually. And that's where we are now as a species on the planet. The victim behavior, because of the accelerating rate of global change and our lack of emotional intelligence to deal with the fear and anxiety that triggers in us, is metastasizing on a global level. We killed more people in the 20th century than in all of recorded human history. And that trend continues in this century. We are not going in the right direction. So the development of our emotional intelligence isn't a solution to the challenges we're facing. It is the only solution to the challenges we're facing.
You mentioned codependency, and I'm many years in codependency recovery after a dysfunctional relationship, only to find out that the dysfunctional relationship was mainly within myself. I would give to others and then get resentful when I didn't get it in return. And that's gambling there. That's putting a lot of my hopes and dreams into external gratification,
Yeah.
or external.
Like energy attracts like energy. So when people have their walls up, those are the type of people they attract into their life. When people learn to lower their walls, those are the type of people they attract into their life.
Yeah.
Wow. Phil. Oh my goodness, just dropping so many gems today. Like
I've been preparing for this for the last 55 years.
I know, but I love that I'm gonna have to write this quote, and I will definitely give you credit for it. But emotional intelligence isn't the only solution. Isn't
Emotional
a solution, it's the
intelligence
only
isn't
solution.
a solution.
Yeah, I love that.
It's the only solution.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
the next stage in our human evolution.
Wow. And I do agree, like energy, attracts like energy, but I also think that when you have a bright light and others don't too, sometimes they're attracted to that as well. And so
sometimes they try and kill it.
yes, I was just gonna say that they try and dim your light, and I've been a witness to this myself, and I've felt it, and so I love that you're touching on energy, and you have in one of your videos, and I have to mention it because it was just so good that you shared it with me, the YouTube video where you discuss the concept of sheepdog, sheep, and wolves. Can you explain this to our audience and share the origins of this and how it was developed? Love this.
Within every organization, think of an organization as a big pool of energy, made up of the individual energy frequencies of everybody in the organization. You've essentially got three types of people within an organization: sheepdog, sheep, and wolves. Most of the organization are sheepdogs that are being fed on, sheep that are being fed on by the wolves. The wolves using often position-based power to create the drama, chaos, and conflict that makes it easier to steal energy from the sheep. The sheepdogs are developed to protect the sheep and inspire them to move in their direction and away from the wolves. So the MBL program develops sheepdogs. That makes sense? Oh, the other thing is, let me just say, so there's a methodology for an individual change, and there's a methodology for organizational change, but you can't have organizational change without individual change first. So the more sheepdogs you train, you bring into the organization, it's actually draining the drama, chaos, and conflict out of the organization that the wolves need to feed off of. So that you're actually, as you drain that negativity out of the organization, you're forcing people to either lower their walls and change or leave the organization for a more chaotic organization. So the organization can heal itself from the inside out by developing the sheepdogs within the organization.
And it all starts with individual change.
Yeah, it has to.
Love
You
that.
can't have, you think of an organization is just a bunch of individuals.
Yeah.
So you can't change the culture within an organization. You can't change an organization without changing the individual first.
And I think that's where a lot of organizations get it wrong. Yeah, that's where I think a lot of organizations get it wrong when they talk about culture and cultural fit and all these, terms that have been buzzed for the last, 12 years or so, maybe even longer. But it's
quite frankly, organizations don't want to do this work because they're scared. They're so focused on quarterly results and stakeholder pressure that they don't have the courage, the leadership to invest in the development of the emotional intelligence within their organization, except companies like Apple that have the ability and they recognize it. But most executives in organizations, especially senior executives, are usually only there for a few years. So the development of an emotionally intelligent organization is an ongoing, never-ending process. And their focus is just too short-term.
No, and it's so true. I see that in startups, especially where things are so fast paced. They're trying to get to whatever destination they're trying to get to hit those quarterly, revenue marks. And they don't take the time to, like you said, invest in the leaders. And more importantly, the leaders, because they're overwhelmed, feeling, all these things, are carrying, wearing multiple hats. They don't even take the time to invest in themselves. Like that's one thing I tried to do.
As difficult as it is to develop emotional intelligence within startups, it's exponentially more difficult to do it within large corporations. It's much easier to do it in a startup than it is to do it in a global organization. The dynamics are off the charts.
Wow. I can only imagine.
Yeah, talking about in our discussion here, we're really talking about the scope of the challenge and the scope of the opportunity we're being presented with. There's a massive opportunity here. And whether we recognize it or not, we must move in this direction. We're at that tipping point where, quite frankly, we don't have a choice. Interesting. Let me just give you a, I don't know how much time we have left in it, but let me just tell you that, let me give you a comparison between IQ and EQ, then we'll talk about AI. Think of IQ as somebody giving you $10,000 a day for 31 days. So at the end of 31 days, you've got $310,000. So think of emotional intelligence as a penny that doubles in value every day. So day 1, you've got a penny. Day 2, you've got 2 pennies. Day 31, you've got $10.7 million. Day 40, you've got over 5 billion. Day 50, you've got over 5 trillion. So not everybody can have 160 IQ. If you had a high IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ, and you simply inherited those genes. You did nothing to develop your intellectual ability. You just simply inherited the genes. But everybody can develop their emotional intelligence by doing emotional labor. And the ROI is massively greater than intellectual intelligence. And another little point to ponder, let's say Einstein had an IQ of around 160. Within the next 2 to 3 years, AI will have an equivalent IQ of over 1,000. So what that means that a lot of the intellectually intensive jobs are going to be done by AI. And over the next 5 to 10 years, maybe not that long, it's estimated that over 60% of jobs today will be replaced by AI. And that's going to free us up to develop our emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
See, AI is simply a tool that reflects our current level of consciousness. In order for AI to become a better tool, we have to raise our level of consciousness.
Yeah.
So we're being pushed in this direction to develop our emotional intelligence and to reconnect with who we truly are and reconnect with each other. And that's a good thing. But that's something we've been avoiding for millennia. And because of some scientists estimate in this century, we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change or 200 centuries worth of change. It's never happened before. Change is increasing at an exponential rate. To put it in perspective, a 10-year-old today, by the time they're 60, will be experiencing equivalent of a year's worth of change in 11 minutes. So we have to be developing our emotional intelligence to counteract the biological fear that change triggers in us, so that we can acknowledge and move through our fear rather than allowing it to control us the way we have been up until now.
Wow, Phil, you have just opened our eyes so much. And I know that our audience is just going to absolutely love what you have to say. And that awareness is what leads to change. So thank you for that. And, you have done so much to impact, the lives of the people that you mentor and coach. What's your vision for the future with MBL?
I'm going to continue to do this for the rest of my life, as long as that happens to be. Quite frankly, we're just putting a very small dent into the work that needs to be done. But I try to help as many people as I can to help them to become sheepdogs so they can in turn inspire others to want to become sheepdogs.
Yeah. And you've inspired me today because you said that there are few of us that have the emotional intelligence and are doing the work we're doing. So it inspires me even more to be
Good.
part of that change.
Good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Me as well, Phil. My gosh. This is buzzing from all the gems that you dropped today. Tell me, because you're fueling my soul with this conversation, but how do you fuel your soul? Your mind, your body, your soul, which is the tagline for this podcast.
I do this.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be healthy. I eat well. I exercise. I'm trying to take as good a care of my physical body as I can to be able to do what I do for as long as I can. I also I love what I do. I love helping people. I love watching the lights come on. I love it as they raise their level of consciousness and the impact that has on them and the people around them. I just love it. I just, I can't think of a better way to spend my life than doing this work.
I can't either. And I'm so grateful that you are doing this because it's so needed. Thank you for that. What are some books that you would recommend to our audience, or even podcasts? Because you said you've been on 150 podcasts. So
yeah. I would Eckhart Tolle.
Ooh,
I love Eckhart Tolle. I would recommend that people read his books, watch his videos, just try and learn as much as you can from him. He's he's amazing. What Eckhart talks about in his books is what the MBL helps to create. So Eckhart talks about his journey, and he talks about the importance of the things we've been talking about. And the MBL program is really the tool, the process by which the things he talks about comes into reality for others. So anything by Eckhart Tolle, I would that's time well spent.
that is a great recommendation.
Yeah. Bill, are you currently accepting any new clients? And if so, what are the prerequisites or criteria for individuals to be considered as potential clients? And then I want to know where people can find you.
So the answer is yes. I'll work with anybody that wants to achieve better results than they're currently getting, and that's really the only prerequisite. You have to have an urgent desire for better results than you're currently getting, because that urgent desire becomes the motivation. It becomes the fuel for the journey. So anybody that would really love to achieve better results than they're currently getting, I would be happy to help.
Thank you. This has been such an incredible interview, Phil. You've definitely fueled my mind, body, and soul. You just have such a sweet soul and spirit. So thank you for the time that you've spent with us. And I know our audience appreciates it as well.
Yes, thank you. I echo Ellie. Thank you so much for just blessing Sunday Soul Day. When we first, connected, I mean, you have such beautiful energy, and I learned so much in our initial call, and we haven't stopped chatting since. And I want to continue to chat, and I'm going to throw my hat in your ring to hopefully be coached by you as well, because you're just phenomenal. You are phenomenal. So thank you so much for all of your wisdom today. Thank you.
Happy to be of service. And I want to thank you for the work that you guys are doing. So thank you. on behalf of the rest of humanity, thank you.
That means a lot. Thanks.
Yes, means so much. Thank you so much, Phil.
My
And
pleasure.
everyone, have a beautiful Sunday. Thank you.